So we're talking about the legislature, but I want to talk about the election because I get to say, and it's still too soon to stop talking about it because it was amazingly interesting in the way that it turned out. And actually it has a lot of relevance to the topic today, Senators, because as you know, up until about 9 o'clock on election night, even Donald Trump himself thought he was going to lose. Mm-hmm. And the preparation for a session was really, in all likelihood, against the backdrop of a Clinton administration and not a Trump administration. Senator Campbell, it seems to me that as you head in January to the next session, the idea of the 85th playing out against the backdrop of a Trump presidency in Washington is different than what you were expecting, right?
Well, no, I was expecting him to win.
Oh, maybe. let us, Donna Campbell, unicorn, the only person in America who believed Trump would win. And you were right, in fact. So what is the difference between a session playing out against the backdrop of a Trump administration versus a Clinton administration?
Sure. Well, one, I think we can look at perhaps saving some money. Now, where would that come from? Well, we're not going to have to sue the Obama administration over things. We should save a few million there.
So you dismantle the apparatus that has basically come into work every day to sue the federal government.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And, you know, we can see support. If we see his, the policies that he wants to put out there, I think we can see saving money as we secure our border. Last session we put in $800 million.
Right.
I think we'll save money there. We will be looking at options that hopefully will be available, school choice, and see our healthcare policies change so that the premiums go down and deductions hopefully will go down, just with simply allowing people to buy insurance across state lines. So, and then with him putting in the orthopedist Congressman Tom Price, providing he's always been a believer of something called Medicaid funding, block Medicaid funding, meaning those dollars would come down as a grant, and that gives Texas Legislature more flexibility on the Medicaid dollars that we're able to use.
Right.
And you know, that will help us with that budget buster Medicaid. So I think we're going to see us be able to save some money and yet still come in with strength in economy, decrease regulations, and with a conservative Senate, you know, we look for those things anyway.
Right. So, Senator Uresti, you represent a number of border counties in your vast district, which stretches all the way out to West Texas. The question of border security, which Senator Campbell alludes to, Chairman Campbell alludes to, is actually a really important one because $800 million in the last budget cycle. DPS was preparing to ask for more than that in the next budget cycle. But in fact now, the administration, an administration that has talked about strength in securing our border, is coming in, and there's open discussion on both sides that you may be able to reduce that spend significantly. Chairman Drew Darby of the Ways and Means Committee in the House said at a Tribune event the other day, he thought that you might be able to take it down to as little as $200 million, just a maintenance budget in the next session. $600 million in what's going to be a tight budget cycle is a big savings. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Sure. And I was not expecting Donald Trump to win, of course. I had my reservations made for the inauguration. I'm not going to make that.
You cancel it?
I canceled
it. It's more than 24 hours out, so you get your deposit back. That's
exactly.
Good. Good.
And then two, because we're not going to be suing the administration as often, there going to be a lot of lawyers out of business, I suppose. So we'll save some money there. But I recall my colleagues from the other side of the aisle demanding that the administration reimburse the state of Texas for the money that we were spending for border security, whether it's the $800 million or the $1.2 billion that is being requested now. So I hope they're going to join me in January when we ask the new administration to reimburse the state of Texas for that $800 million that they were asking the Obama administration to reimburse the state of Texas for. Because if we start off with that $800 million, that can go a long way in doing a lot of the things that Senator Campbell talked about.
You know, Senator Uresti, the Senator Campbell refers to the question of health care and the change that the new administration intends to make, whether it's a full-on repeal and replace or it's a partial repeal and replace. Not yet clear exactly where that's headed. You know that in the all-funds budget of the state of Texas, health care right now represents 37% of our spend, for the first time in the history of the state, equal to roughly what we spend on education. isn't she right that getting our money back and having the ability to monkey with the way we implement healthcare reform in Texas is going to be beneficial to a state that has been in desperate need of some kind of fix?
Well, I think it sounds good on its face, but we have to look at, historically, what Texas has done on its own, not including the money that comes from the federal government. And I would submit to you that we haven't done a very good job. That's why you have thousands of children that went uninsured.
So you think if we could have fixed the problem ourselves before, we would have done it?
Exactly. So I hope, and I truly do hope, that with the new administration, things change for the positive for our constituency. But we've had that opportunity at the state level to some degree, and we have failed our children and our families when it comes to providing or expanding health care. So one, and then two, if it's in the form of a block grant or not, I am concerned that if the federal government, or at least the way things were happening previously, doesn't at least give us some parameters.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about what kind of health care we're truly going to deliver, again, because we haven't done a very good job in the past.
There's been open discussion, Senator Campbell, about the possibility of privatizing Medicare. There's a bit of a opening up to presents on Christmas Day aspect to Republicans having control of both the House and the Senate and the White House. Now it's like, well, we have the opportunity to do a whole bunch of things that we were unable to do before. In some ways, it's like what happened in Texas a couple years ago, where there was a wish list. And when the right people were finally in the right place and the right leaders were finally in the right offices at the statewide level, it's kind of like, well, now we control everything. We can unfurl that wish list. So do you think that we need to make a more structural change to the way we do healthcare in this country beyond simply eliminating the Affordable Care Act? And if so, as a doctor, somebody who knows this material very well, better than most people, how would that affect Texas?
I think one of the most important things is to take the wedge that government has put in between the doctor and the patient relationship.
Yeah.
Doctors are leaving the profession because it has become so burdensome with regulations. They have to hire, so part of their overhead is trying to hire compliance people in their office, compliance staff, to make sure they can get the insurance filled out right, reimbursement, and the government paying Medicaid dollars especially is such a poor return that having private industry unencumbered by government or minimized in regulations by government, I think would be a good thing.
Yeah.
We need to make sure insurance companies, like USAA, great, they've got a stellar reputation and a strong insurance company. So we would want to make sure that any insurance companies providing business are, strong and sustainable. But I think that the best way for us to have good insurance is to allow the private enterprise, private companies.
You don't fear the involvement of private enterprise in this case?
I welcome it.
You welcome it. So, there are a couple of, just to stay on healthcare for one more second, there are a couple of key aspects of the Affordable Care Act that are popular. I'll ask both you and Senator Uresti this. And in fact, President-elect Trump is discovering that it's one thing to say we're going to get rid of it, but it's another thing to tell however many people who've not had to live in a world in which pre-existing conditions were a kill card. It's one thing to tell them, well, now we're going to go back to that. Or we're to say to kids who are 26 years old and have been able to remain on the insurance of their parents, well, now we're going to go back on that. In fact, Senator Campbell, although Texas didn't expand Medicaid, we did reduce our percentage of our uninsured population from about 25% almost 7 years ago to 17.1% now. Still the largest in the nation. Still 4.6 million people without health insurance, but it's not the 6 million who had no health insurance before. What is the sequencing of whatever change occurs as it relates to the state? So you have these people who got health insurance in the last 6, 7 years. Do you wait to get rid of the Affordable Care Act until you have another mechanism in place? How exactly does this work?
Well, I wouldn't wait.
You would get rid of it, but then those people would have no health insurance.
Well, a couple of things. One, you touched on the 2 points that a lot of folks feel are probably good. An opt-in for parents if they want to keep their 26-year-old on their insurance plan. That's an opt-in, whether it costs them a little bit more or not. However that seems to work out, that's still an opt-in.
People seem to like that.
Yes, and I don't have an objection to that as long as it's not a mandated thing.
Right.
Then number two, having, caring people with pre-existing illnesses, I think is important. I think that's a responsible thing for an insurance company to do. It may cost a little bit more, and I don't know how that would work out, but I believe overall, when free enterprise takes insurance, health insurance, gets it at the helm of their ability, then the cost will come down and people can afford it. And we can talk about how more people have insurance, but when you look at it, the cost of insurance has skyrocketed and the deductibles are so high that many people are having to still pay out of the pocket. So while they may on record be able to say, yes, we've got insurance, a lot of people effectively don't because they're having to pay out of pocket
So you would
so
not,
much.
I wanted to just be clear about this. So you would not wait. I saw a story last night that said that the Congress may come in January and vote to repeal and replace, but actually delay the effects of the repeal and replace for as much as 3 years until a new plan is in place. So you would not wait for a new plan to be in place.
No.
You would just go ahead. Well, Senator
Because,
Uresti,
well, I
yeah.
think, and let me
Yeah.
preface this, I think a whole lot can be done by the stroke of a pen, allowing people to buy insurance across state lines.
Right.
I believe insurance companies would then, be able to come in. There'll be more choices for people.
Right.
I believe the cost will come down. I believe that would happen relatively
And if it
quickly.
turned out that some people who had health insurance over the last 6 years all of a sudden did not, that would just be essentially the cost of doing business.
Well, I think that opportunities will be out there for them to, whether
Right.
it's a switch or just stay with the same company
Right.
they're at right now.
Senator Uresti, I know that Senator Campbell hates many things, but maybe nothing more than mandates from the federal government. On the other hand, if the federal government had not mandated that insurance companies stop denying people coverage on the basis of pre-existing conditions, it wouldn't have happened.
Well, exactly, and I respectfully disagree with my colleague with regard to just eliminating, the Affordable Health Care Act. I think that's irresponsible for us to do to those families that are relying on that insurance, that are seeking help, that are
Right.
getting the treatment that they need. If the new administration decides to do away with it, we need to be responsible about it. I do agree with Senator Campbell with regard to Medicaid and the bureaucracy that exists and the delay in payments to our doctors, and I think that has disincentivized a lot of doctors from participating. I
Right.
think we need to do a better job there. But again, the state has made it very difficult for people to access even Medicaid. I mean, we've put obstacles in front of these poor families. We're not even talking about the families that can afford health care, just for qualifying for Medicaid. We make them, we were making them sign up every 6 months, and these are poor working families that can barely afford to pay their rent. So we haven't been responsible in that regard. So if we do away with the Affordable Health Care Act,
Right.
I think we're going backwards.
So let me move from the Trump effect to just the plain old 85th legislative session. Every 2 years, 140 days, you all come in to do the business of the 10th largest economy in the world. I know some people wish you came in 2 days every 140 years. As a member of the press, I wish you were there every day, every year, but that's my own sickness, I'm afraid. You're going to come in January 10th, you're going to gavel in. One of the major issues, if not the most major issue you're going to deal with is public school finance. We had a lawsuit that, in kind of true Texas Groundhog Day fashion, we have a plan to fund public schools. People don't like it, they sue, it goes through the courts, comes back on all of you. This time we had the Supreme Court come back over the summer and say, in essence, that the system of funding public education is really, really bad, but just not bad enough for them to force you to do something about it, so they're kicking it back to you guys. 85,000 new students in the Texas public education system every year because of the growth of our population. Do you have enough money now to spend on public ed?
Of course not.
Of course not. You want to pause before answering that? We do not have enough money.
Absolutely not. As you said, 85,000 new kids coming in, growing population. Our population just in San Antonio is expected to grow by 1 million folks
Right.
in the next 20 years or so. Of course, the state of Texas is going to double.
Double by 2050, right?
It's just
Yeah.
it's not there, and it's been lacking for decades. I have, again, the third poorest district in Texas, about 51 school districts, hundreds of schools, of course, that are just barely making it, having very
Yeah.
difficult times providing education to their kids. So no, we don't have enough money.
Senator Campbell, is there enough money going to public ed right now?
I think there's enough money going to education, and we need to look at education reform.
Right. So maybe enough money is going, but it's not being spent the right way,
I
or we're
think
not setting policy the right way.
I think we can look at the dollars we're spending on education and put all the tools in the toolbox that are available and look at how we can truly reform school finance. I was happy with the court's decision and recognition that jurisdiction of school
Right.
finance leads to be with the legislature.
Right, but of course, Senator, even the people who were saying that the state was not out of compliance with the Constitution painted a very grim picture
Well, sure.
of public education.
But you know, you do, and when I say, I think we can do a better job, and a more efficient job with spending, there is something out of kilter when you're hearing we need more dollars for schools, yet we see palatial athletic fields being built. We see computers in some places being thrown out why can't we use those again? We could look at efficiencies in bringing internet into the classrooms instead of
Right.
spending so many dollars on textbooks, the physical textbooks. So I think there's many ways we can look at efficiencies.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe school choice has got to be considered when we're looking at the finance for education.
Yeah, well, we'll come to school choice in a second because I do think
Sure.
there's a linkage. I want to talk about that. But let me ask you if you believe there's a correlation between per student spending and performance of our public schools.
I believe, no.
You don't?
No. What we have seen over the past decade is more spending has been appropriated for public schools, yet we haven't seen the parallel
Right.
improvement in academics that we would expect. So if dollars,
Right.
correlated with academic achievement,
you'd see an upgrade
we would
in
see an
per-
upgrade, and we're not.
Yeah.
So that just tells us let's step back,
Right.
take a second look.
Right.
But
Yeah.
cutting dollars is not going to make it any better.
But
for
throwing
sure.
dollars after a broken system
Right.
is just not the answer.
And I will say, Senator Uresti, to support Senator Campbell's point here, the reality is there are other states that spend more per student than Texas, and yet those states don't have better performance in their public schools than we do. If there were a true correlation, the states that spent more per student would theoretically be seeing better performance.
And most of those states are a lot smaller geographically than the state of Texas.
True.
And speaking of my district, again, I go all the way out to West Texas. There are challenges that exist in Del Rio and in Uvalde and in Alpine that my schools have that those smaller states don't necessarily have. I have school districts that have buildings that are 80 years old.
Right.
Those challenges they're trying to deal with just getting air
Right.
conditioning to be efficient in their schools. So you can now. I'll also say you cannot apply a cookie cutter approach to school finance, and I think
I agree there.
that's one mistake that we've made.
Well, Senator Campbell brings up, in Texas, there's nothing more interesting to talk about or more controversial in some ways to talk about than football, right? Senator Campbell brings up a good point. I'm aware of football stadiums north of $60 million in McKinney, in Allen, in Katy. You stand back and you go, I think it's reasonable, at least from an optics standpoint, to ask the question. Public ed has its hand out and says we don't have enough, and yet somehow they're figuring out a mechanism to fund $60 million football stadiums. Is something wrong here?
I agree with that, but that's those are a few instances. We don't have that problem at Harlandale.
Persistent. It's not a persistent problem.
Exactly. We don't have that problem with Southside or South San. Alamo Heights isn't building those type of facilities. So yes, there may be a small percentage of abuse, and I agree with that. But overall, that's not the case.
So will you be a vote in favor of more money into public ed this
Absolutely.
this session? You will not be a vote for more
I
money.
will not be a vote for more money. But let me preface by saying, we have to look at every bill and where the dollars are going.
You think we should be funding enrollment growth?
Yes.
So you'd fund enrollment growth.
Well-
You just wouldn't go beyond that.
We need to fund enrollment growth, but with that in mind, I think we have to look at how all the dollars are spent.
Right.
We can't just say we're going to write the check for that. There are two things that are budget busters and that we can't cap. We can't cap Medicaid, and while we didn't expand Medicaid vertically by increasing the poverty level dollars, we have so many people moving here every day. Our Medicaid rolls are expanding horizontally, so that's a dollar.
Well,
we can't cap
healthcare
that.
costs are hockey sticking in
Yes,
the state, definitely.
in addition.
Right,
And then we can't cap the number of children that we educate. So those two items are budget busters. So are we responsible for providing dollars for an adequate education? And do we want to fund education for our children? Absolutely.
Right.
I do, he does, we all do.
Right.
The difference comes from how are we going to do it? We have to take a good look at how we're financing that.
Yeah. Now, the reform question you brought up is obviously one that has been on the minds of the Texas Senate in specific and the Texas Legislature in general the last couple of sessions. The interesting thing is that when I say school choice, and you say school choice, and Senator Uresti says school choice, we may mean three different things. There's a continuum of options along the lines of school choice. There's, my kid's in a failing school right now, and I'm not happy with that. I want to pull my kid out of that school and put my kid in a school in the same district
Yes.
that I prefer, that I think would be a better school. That's the law currently, right? You can do that
Public
now.
school choice.
That's one right over here. There's charters, either a capped number or an uncapped number of charters. All the way out on this end, one might say, is a straight voucher program where a parent gets a check, and that check you take to go across the street to a parochial or a private school. I mean, there's a lot of places along this end of it where there might be a scholarship. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to go at this. When you say school choice,
Yes.
what do you, Senator Campbell, mean?
I mean that parents are empowered to choose the education system that serves that child
Not just
best.
public.
Not just public, be that private or parochial. And, you know, let me pause right there. When we're talking about a parent able to take a child out of one school campus within the district and move them to another school within the district, that is just not as easy. While it's the law, it is not as easy as it sounds, because they've got to jump through hoops. Superintendents have to sign off for it. But when you're looking at school choice, we are looking at how can we have the best education for that child. That includes special ed, wherever a parent, autism,
Yep.
where parents can take that child and go to the school of their choice. Now, let's not forget, school choice is already out there. If a parent is wealthy enough and mobile enough, that child gets to go to the school that that parent thinks is
Right.
best for their child. But we don't offer that for our poorest of poor.
Right, but the difference, Senator Campbell, I'll just try to put myself here as a paper tiger, because you'll just smack me down when I'll put it. But I'm going to just, so the lieutenant governor in a conversation about school choice some time ago looked at me at one point and he said, well, you send your kids to parochial school, don't you? And I said, yes. He said, how come you should have the option to do that and everybody else shouldn't?
Okay.
The difference is no one's writing me a check to take to my Episcopal school where my kids are enrolled. So that's one difference here. I think everybody would agree with you that the opportunity to put your kid in a school that works for your kid is a good one. The question is whether the state should be giving you dollars back to do that.
Well, I mean, just obviously this is a passion for me.
Oh, I know it is.
And when we're looking
You've been
at,
among the loudest and most passionate advocates on this for the last several sessions.
well, you know, really, education is the great equalizer for all of our children.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's the civil rights issue of the day, education. So when we say, let's take a fraction of the per pupil spending, okay, and let's just talk about the part that the state provides. When you take just a fraction of that and that follows the child, there's still remainder dollars. So those dollars are at the discretion of the legislature. Those dollars could go for retirement teachers' health care. They could go for retirement teachers' system. It could go for teachers' salaries, specializing in math and reading. It could go to a whole host of things. It could go for to help support the fast growth schools. So we're only talking about a few of the dollars.
Right.
And that would follow the child to whatever school the parent wants.
And would accountability measures follow those dollars as well?
Well, it would be an accredited school.
Right.
There's discussion out there, should homeschool be included or not? The way I see it right now, homeschool's not included in that. It's an accredited school. I think many of us do believe that we want to know that our children are progressing in their academics. So some type of norm reference testing, I think, would be good. But again, we want to make sure we don't put mandates on the private or parochial schools, and at the same time, let's see if we can reduce some of the mandates on the public school.
Senator Campbell is obviously sincere about this, believes that more people ought to have more choices. What kind of a problem do you have with that?
Well, I think it's a slippery slope. And when you talk about homeschooling, I think it's a slippery slope. I think if vouchers pass this session, wait until next session, if not this session, with an amendment, that's going to happen. I mean, the numbers are there. I think we all know that. So, but I do have concerns about that. And I do have concerns about not having accountability if it does happen. You have to have certain mandates.
These are tax dollars.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, and I think our taxpayers expect that. They expected it on the border security, the $800 million, which we haven't given them, by the way, and they're going to expect it here. And I do agree with you, Senator Campbell, that right now, parents have a choice. Those that can afford it have a choice. In my district, the third poorest district in the state of Texas, where the per capita income is $18,500 a year,
Right.
they're not really going to have that choice. And then the last thing I'll say about that is we haven't adequately funded our school system for decades. So some are doing much better because they've been funded appropriately and at higher levels than the school districts in Senate District 19.
Yeah. So you'll be a no vote. You'll be a yes vote. My question is to you: do you think that this legislature will respond any differently on this issue? In other words, I look at the election results in November. Democrats picked up a couple of seats in the Texas House. Senate is effectively exactly the same. It's not the same people, but from a distribution of the parties standpoint, state leadership is exactly the same. So I'm a fan of the old Albert Einstein line about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. Twice now the Senate has sent over a robust school choice bill, once last session with money attached to it. And it died instantly upon entering the House chamber. The first time it died with a procedural vote. They didn't even bother to take a vote last time. I can count to 76, even though I'm a journalist. I'm not really a big math guy, but I can count to 76. Senator Uresti, there are not 76 votes in the Texas House to pass the school choice bill of a sort that Senator Campbell is talking about, any more than there have been the last 2 times.
We got close. When I was in the House, if you recall, 10 years ago or so, we fell short, I think, by 1 vote.
But in recent memory, I mean, this has not been so. What do you do, Senator Campbell, if the realities of the body, the House is not interested in this bill? What do you do?
I think a lot, like any bill, we look and see where's the objection. There's not an objection that we want to give the best education to our children that we can.
Everybody agrees on it.
Everybody agrees on that.
Right.
It is taxpayer dollars, and taxpayers, whether, very wealthy folks or less wealthy, taxpayers should have a say, and those dollars should still go toward educating their child at a place they would want. So any bill, legislation, has to be looked at, okay, where are the objections? How can we fix that?
Right.
I think it's great when we have discussions, we'll know, this is not any good. Well, why? So I think that the blessing of perseverance is success. And we're not trying to railroad any one specific bill. Right. We're trying to give the best education to our children.
You're more optimistic that you could do something with this.
Absolutely.
Can I interject, though?
Yeah,
and I would, again, respectfully disagree. They are railroading these bills. They did away with the 2/3 rule 2 sessions ago in order to pass bills like the voucher bill and other stuff. So I would respectfully disagree. For 60-something years, we had the 2/3 rule in the Texas Senate that allowed both parties to participate and to compromise and to bring the best bill forward that helped the majority of Texans. And it worked. I mean, you know that. Most people know that. So in that regard,
you feel like it is being railroaded.
Absolutely. That and many other bills.
But then I'm just going to interject real quick. That's why we have, though, 2 chambers. So, before, if something can't get out of the Senate, then there's no opportunity for the House to render an opinion and toss it about so that we can have more minds look at it and see what we can do. So even though we can get it out of the Senate, that's not an automatic railroaded passage.
As the last 2 sessions have proven.
But with the 2/3 rule, we would have had that deliberation of that.
Well, I'm going to just go out on a limb and say that the 2/3 rule is not coming back. So
I was worried you would say that.
Sorry, Senator Uresti. But so I was with the Lieutenant Governor before the Greater Houston Partnership at the end of October, and the conversation of school choice and school finance came up, and the exact phrase he used to me, and I made him repeat it because I wanted to be sure I heard him, was no one without the other. What the Lieutenant Governor said was, we're not going to take up a school finance fix in the legislative session unless the House takes up school choice. We are not going to do school finance without school choice. What do you think about that?
Well, does he mean they have to pass it, or do they just need to take it up?
I don't know.
And I haven't had that conversation.
We haven't even gotten into the session already, and we're taking hostages. I love this.
Right.
This is why I love the legislature. Do you think that you should that there should be no movement on school finance as a sort of a big fix without school choice? That they're baked together? It sounded to me earlier like you were saying that.
Well, I do believe that you cannot reasonably have a discussion about school finance reform without putting all the tools in the toolbox out there.
And that includes
talking
education
about
reform.
School choice, right. We're paying for education. So let's reform it and let's pay for it. And he has got, yes, poor districts out there, but we've got a system in the school finance that's not working Well, and that's the Robin Hood, where you take dollars from richer districts, if you will. Those people are paying high, dollars to their school
And
district.
they're watching their dollars
and they're
go out of
watching
the
their
system.
dollars go out to the
Right.
poorer district. So something has to be done that's equitable, but still, and we're talking about accountability.
Right.
Let's have accountability on the academic performance. And let's don't buy baby grand pianos. We saw that happen at Edgewood, $150,000 for a baby grand piano a few years back. Yet they were on the, that's a poor school district. So something's just inequitable, and we need to fix that.
We're going to, of course, run out of time because I sit here and talk with them for 4 hours, and I'd be really happy to do it. I want to ask about the so-called bathroom bill. I say it's the so-called bathroom bill because the lieutenant governor has renamed it or named it the Women's Privacy Act. Mm-hmm. He is concerned, and others in the Senate are concerned, others in the legislature are concerned about access to bathrooms, showers, locker rooms. And this is a piece of legislation that the lieutenant governor intends to take up and to make one, and in fact, has already identified it as one of his core legislative priorities as he's talked about them in advance of the session. Are you with him on this, Senator?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
We haven't seen a bill yet. I don't think it's out there.
But you know, in essence, what's coming.
Yes, and my stand is private business, nonprofit, church, they should set their own bathroom policies regarding privacy and dignity for everyone.
Local control, you might say.
I've gotten to where I don't like local control. Control is just a bad word.
Right.
Local liberty, if you will.
Local liberty.
But what I would like to see is, I'd like to see Texas values not hijacked for the sake of football, basketball. I would like to see private businesses unencumbered by ordinances that require that. And at the same time, if a private business wants to allow men into safe spaces for women, you know what? Just put the signage out there so it's clear to the public. But that's their right also.
Right.
So that's where I stand on it.
Senator.
So if we pass the voucher bill and we give money to private schools, are we going to mandate to the private schools that they have to have these particular bathrooms or not?
Well, school, they should not mix male bathrooms with female bathrooms. We should not have boys going into little girl showers and even vice versa.
But I think it begs the question, this has not been a problem. I mean, where have these individuals been utilizing the restroom?
Have you not heard from your constituents this is an issue?
I have not had one person.
Have you heard from your
contact.
constituents?
Yes, it's a
I have not had one person contact. We both represent Bexar County. We both represent San Antonio. I have not had one person contact me. We have school board members here that probably agree.
But we've got, we do,
Right.
I represent other counties.
You do.
And there is the problem. But, it should not really have had to come up because I think it's a nonsensical policy. For years we have not mixed boys and girls. It is not right. If there's no privacy or dignity, you've got a 15-year-old girl and you've got boys able to go in there. It violates their privacy.
Let me ask you a pragmatic question, not one of, again, you feel very strongly about this. I understand and respect, same. We just had an election in North Carolina. North Carolina has had a bill like this on the books and has lost a bunch of business. The NCAA decided not to bring the Final Four to North Carolina as a consequence of this. There were other professional sports leagues that said, we're not going to go to North Carolina if this is on the books. We had concerts that didn't go to North Carolina, all that. Donald Trump won North Carolina, but the governor of North Carolina, who was a Republican, lost because of the backlash over this bill. Are you concerned that we could see a similar situation happen in the state of Texas or in your community here, which is hosting the Final Four in 2018? Or anything else that might happen in Texas similar to what happened in North Carolina? Does that worry you at all?
It doesn't, because the baseline value is, are you willing to change values that have worked for us for years?
Yep.
Sacrifice the privacy and the dignity of children or
Right.
adults.
If it's right, it's
for
right.
the sake of
Yeah.
a basketball game.
So if it's
I
right,
don't
it's
think
right,
so.
and the economic development consequences that could conceivably.
You know, and as
You
you,
know- yeah.
yes, I know I walked on what you were saying just
Oh,
a
that's fine,
second
that's
there.
fine, fine.
But you know, you started out by talking about how we've got the 10th largest economy in the world.
True.
Okay, that's not because of one event,
Right.
a Final Four.
Somebody didn't want to come because we have policy that is out of sync with what they think we should be
Yeah.
doing. Let them go somewhere else.
Yes, we have got a great state, provides hope for many, that's why they're coming here all the time.
Right.
And we've got a business climate that
Yep.
everybody comes to. But we do have to draw the line to maintain those values
Right.
that not only keep Texas, but keep the United States that beacon of hope.
But it's
what's
not
right-
been an issue. I mean, it's never been an issue
So
in
why
my
is it-
district. Nobody, maybe they have to you, Senator Campbell, but when did this become an issue? When did people start knocking down on my door? And I've been in the legislature 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
20 years. And I'd listen to everybody's issues, and if they had, I'd mention it today, that every other call
Right.
is on this issue. But one, and then two, it's not just about a basketball game. I mean, I think that's minimizing what we're really talking about. I mean, you're talking about economic impact to a city that could be in the millions of dollars.
Right.
And cumulatively, our state does well because of all the businesses,
Yep.
whether it's the Cowboys or the Spurs or other businesses that provide to those
Well, in fact, the
activities.
business community in the state of Texas, which cannot be described monolithically any more than anything else can be described monolithically, but the business community, which has tended to be small c, if not capital C conservative, actually seems to have some concerns, at least as they've been articulated so far, about this legislation as it relates to the things you're talking about.
Sure, and I think for their bottom line, one, and two, probably because they haven't seen it as an issue either.
Right. We're going to go to questions from the audience here in a second. I want to ask about one more thing that may be of interest to people in this room. It is of interest to me. Are we going to ban sanctuary cities in this legislative session? Will there be legislation to ban sanctuary cities?
I'm sure there'll be legislation. There's talk
Is it
about
going to pass?
I hope it doesn't pass because I think the intent may be it may have good intent,
Yep.
but I think the result is going to have a bad result on places like San Antonio and other places in my district, on people that look like me as well.
You're concerned that if we allow sanctuary cities to be banned, I mean, of course, what's said and has been said previously is that the concern is racial profiling and other efforts that may be in the direction of law enforcement would target communities. directly or
And I will
indirectly.
tell you that I know San Antonio specifically, our previous, or current sheriff, I should say, Sheriff Parmelo, our chief of police, feel that it's a concern, one. And two, they have complied with any federal rules and regulations
Right.
that are currently in place. And again, it has not been an issue, not in San Antonio.
The governor said the other day on Twitter, Senator Uresti, that not only does he believe we should ban sanctuary cities, but he also believes we should ban sanctuary campuses. That is to say, college campuses that have, and a number have said they intend to do this, that will stand up and say we're going to protect the undocumented students on our campuses. He has said that he'll cut funding from any campuses that decide to identify themselves as sanctuary campuses.
Well, with all due respect to the governor, one, I think that contradicts the local control, or what did you call it earlier?
Local liberty.
Local liberty.
I'm going to use that one.
Issue
Please. Yeah.
as well, and I think it, again, it contradicts that. And two, I think it's unfair to the mission of those campuses or those churches,
Right.
for example. We're going to undermine their mission.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be doing
Senator
that.
Campbell, will we ban sanctuary cities? Should we ban sanctuary campuses? Should we get in line with what is now going to be the federal position on this, which is we're going to cut funding off if communities don't do it?
I do believe that we should have a ban on sanctuary cities. We're a nation of laws. And you can't have across the United States different cities setting their own laws, which have been set already in the Constitution, defined what legal immigration is, or a legal U.S. legal U.S. citizen is. And we will always have problems with illegal immigration if we reward illegal entry, because we're a nation of laws. So I do believe that we should ban sanctuary cities. I'm not sure how you could pull out a campus separate from that.
Would you support would you support the governor's statement the other day that if a campus decides to protect undocumented students, that they should lose funding from the state?
Yes, I would, because you cannot reward institutions that will go against state policy or United States policy when it is a direct illegal act. And so the answer, yes, I mean, and let's keep in mind, immigration reform nationally does need to be done. But we do get, about 1 million legal immigrants per year. But do we need reform? Yes. It shouldn't take so long. It shouldn't cost so much money. You shouldn't have to have an attorney to be able to get citizenship or come here legally. But because that system's broken, just allowing another system that is not the right way to do it is not reasonable. We've got to be able to control our borders in order to govern effectively. So,
and I don't disagree with her on the last 2 points,
Yeah.
but again, to the point you made, Evan, on the racial profiling, I was born right down the street at Santa Rosa, maybe less than a mile from here.
Yep.
Grew up on the south side of San Antonio. But it's folks that look like me that are going to be could be victims of the racial profiling. And it just begs for abuse in different levels. And that's the concern
Yeah.
that I have, and I think many share.
All right,
and
let's,
I think along Senator Uresti's point that we can look at how to avoid racial profiling. But what we want to do is make sure that anybody who is an illegal immigrant commits a crime, they're not just turned back out on the street.
I agree with that.
I
I agree with the second part, but the first part, how do you avoid the racial profiling?
Well, I think sometimes there's sensationalism about some of the racial profiling, but I do believe that we can, and I mean, I trust law enforcement. They are smart people, and I believe that sometimes they're given a bad rap that they have profiling, and we can try to tweak. How can we shore up so that we're not having racial profiling? I am for that. So we're in agreement there to try to stop racial profiling. Right. But I do want to give credit to our law enforcement and those that,
Right.
can tell the difference.
Any areas of agreement, I'm just tempted to call this event over. But in fact, we're going to have questions. Jessica's got a microphone if you have your hand up. How about over there? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Juani. I am from the south side of San Antonio. And I have a question regarding sanctuary cities and sanctuary campuses, particularly because, I went to McCollum High School. I was valedictorian. And I had the opportunity, because I was born here, to apply for scholarships and attend an amazing institution. However, the guy that was valedictorian, the second one, he was undocumented. He was brought here to San Antonio by his parents when he was a baby. And he was number 2 in the class, incredibly smart. In some places, he was smarter than me, in others, I beat him. But he was amazingly talented. And when it came to applying to schools, it was so hard for him to have that opportunity. And his talent went to waste because he couldn't go to college. Now, thankfully, thanks to President Obama and so many others, DACA is in place. DACA allows students like him to apply to universities. And in Texas, the Texas Dream Act allows them to even apply to some scholarships.
So what's your
1 second. And I do want to get...
Well, maybe we should switch.
No, but I do want to get... No, because I think it's important to have context. And sometimes when we don't recognize our own privilege, it's easy for us to make legislation that actually really interrupts the lives of others. But I would say, you said you are a nation of laws. We are also a nation of immigrants. And there is not one person in this room that was, maybe unless if you're Native American, that didn't come from some sort of immigrant background. And so my question to you is, by having these campuses now, and you want to get rid of this safe space for students, what are we going to tell people like my friend, right? People like DACA students who are finally able to pursue these opportunities and use their talents for good, for the betterment of our economy, of our country. If you are telling them that they will not have to live in fear in their classrooms to be outed by their professors or by the university presidents.
Okay, so what about a case exactly like the one just described, where you have this kid who went through high school in Texas, who obviously was a great student, who presumably did everything that a citizen might have done? Are you prepared to tell that student, because he happens to be undocumented, that he does not have access to the same opportunities that this individual does here?
We have many students in higher education facilities, institutions that are not citizens, and they come here with student visas to allow them to go to school.
Right.
And they have to apply, and that's a manner in which the United States has got in order to provide education.
You're satisfied that he would have opportunities that, if not equal to everybody else, but would be sufficient based on the way we do things in
We're
this
not
country?
trying to take education away from anybody.
Right.
They may just have to access it differently.
You believe
I
that
don't
we should
believe
get rid of
Texas-
the DACA program to which she referred, that we should get rid of it?
I believe that, yes, that we need to be able to have students apply. If they're Texas citizens, they apply like Texas citizens. If they're citizens from another, if they're not citizens of America, then they go through the system like any other person wanting to come to America
Right.
to do their studies.
And that includes, I should ask, that includes an oldie but a goodie, in-state tuition rates for undocumented persons. Should they be paying out-of-state tuition rates if they're
Yes,
not
I
documented?
believe they should.
So you'd vote
And
to overturn the law from 2001, I
I
believe it
actually
is,
had a bill last year
in order to do that.
that's just stopped in-state tuition for non-Texas citizens.
Senator Uresti, can you defend DACA?
Sure. First of all, she went to the same high school that I did, McCollum High School.
Were you the valedictorian?
Well, so your question.
just saying.
Ben,
Just saying.
Were you the valedictorian in your
Me?
class?
Oh, hell no.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, hell no. That's why I'm in journalism.
That's why I'm in politics.
There you
so.
go. Hey, there we go. All right.
Yeah, I'm prepared to defend it. I don't think
Yeah.
it's fair to those children. They come over when they're a year old or 2 years old or 3 years old because their parents were looking for a better way of life to provide for their families or to get out of a situation that was unsafe or dangerous to them. And I don't think it's fair to them. She said that we're a country of immigrants. If you come in this country and you're committing crimes and felonies, different story. And I agree there. But if you come in here and you want to just provide for your family.
Sounds like a good kid.
Absolutely.
Well, and I don't doubt, I mean, she is, and congratulations on your standing in school.
But the
we are a nation-
salutatorian is the one that
But we
is
are
a
a-
completely different boat.
But we are a nation of laws, and just because we started as a nation made of immigrants, we have a constitution and a nation of laws.
Woman right over here on the end. Go ahead. Yes.
Senator Campbell,
Yes, ma'am.
where is it in the Constitution that it says anything about immigration?
What it talks about in the Constitution is what defines a citizen, an American citizen. So, we have to, if you're not an American citizen, you have to have a legal way to come in. You have to have a way to come in.
Sir.
We're just going picking on Senator Campbell, I guess. I'm sorry. Another one directed to you, Senator Campbell. You said education is the great equalizer, and that it's the civil rights issue of our time. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, among workers aged 25 and older with a bachelor degree, weekly earnings for men were $1,385 and $1,049 for women. $1,385 for men. $1,219 for white workers and $970 for black workers with the same educational attainment. So among similar educational attainment levels, women made less than men and African Americans made less than whites. So to me, that would suggest that there are other issues in addition to education that need to be resolved in order to have a fair and more just society. Would you agree
Frame
with
this in the form of a question.
Would you agree with that assessment that there are other issues that need to be addressed in order to achieve equality and a more just society in addition to education?
That's an easy sure. Yes, there are a lot of things that need to be addressed, but not necessarily mandated by the government. And when I talk about, I think education is the civil rights issue of the day, I think it is unfair and unjust to have our poorest of poor not be able to get an educational opportunities, K through 12, that somebody that is not poor has. I would like to see our poorest of poor, that single parent or two-parent, low-income home, be able to send their child to a private school that they would want to have. And if they didn't have all the money, the dollars for that tuition, because just a fraction of the
Yep.
per pupil spending is not going to cover all private institutions, but it could be partnered with scholarships.
Is there a role for the government to play? I'm guessing the answer is going to be no, but I'm not going to assume. Is there a role for the government to play in dealing with that inequity?
You mean defining how much you're going to pay someone?
Well, you know, we've heard the phrase equal pay for equal work over how many political campaigns, right? I mean, there's a lot of different bits of legislation that have been introduced, federal legislation and legislation in the state legislature that would have the government play a role in narrowing that inequity. What do you think about that?
I do not think the government needs to meddle with what a private business needs to pay their employees. If rights are being violated and somebody's harmed, physically harmed, conditions, working conditions, sweatshops, things like that, sure, that needs to be investigated.
But beyond that, the market's the market.
The market is the market, and you know, employers will pay employees that are good and pushing their product and doing well. They'll find a way to pay them.
Senator, should you be messing with what private business pays women, African Americans, Latinos?
Well, I think we definitely need to make sure that the playing field is even in that regard, and that you don't have discrimination and you don't have harassment and you're not keeping certain folks down from moving up. And we've seen that. I mean, and so I do think we have a responsibility and a role to play to some degree, but of course we need to let businesses compete. But I think we need to make sure that that's not happening. Now,
Okay.
and I would like to add to your K to 12 that it should be pre-K to 12.
You're just trying to start a fight with 1 minute left, aren't you? We'll take the last one right there. Is that you have one? Are you standing by a person with a question? Okay. Do we have time for one more? Okay, let's take one more. Gentleman over there in the back. Yes.
Yes. Straight ticket voting. Should we eliminate it?
Should we eliminate straight? This was an interesting election for straight ticket voting, actually. Should we eliminate straight ticket voting?
I think it gives a lot of pause for thought. I would be in favor of eliminating straight ticket voting.
You would?
I would.
Absolutely not. I think it's absurd to interfere with the person's right to
Voting
vote.
liberty. No, we
Yeah.
have to actually
I mean,
brand
right now
it
we're going to
differently.
tell somebody how they can vote?
No, they're
That
going to
you can't straight ticket vote if they choose to do so?
But couldn't they just go down and vote for everybody by the same party annually?
Or they could push straight ticket voting. That's their choice.
Do you-
I
do
thought
you
we
thi-
were pro-choice.
But you know,
Senator
what's
Campbell.
so you're pro-choice.
No, I'm not
pro-choice.
pro-choice.
What's
I am pro-life.
What's interesting, Senator, is that straight ticket voting has actually, there are a number of Democrats who believe that straight ticket voting has been an impediment to Democrats getting back in the game competitively in elections because a lot of down ballot races that you all may be able to compete in, nobody's paying attention to because they come in on the Republican side and they just go bonk.
And the Democrats have to do a better job then of educating
Good.
their voters.
I will end on the Democrats have to do a better job. Good.
Yay,
I'm good
good.
with that, actually. All right. Please, thank you all for coming. Please thank Senators Uresti and Campbell and our friends at UTSA. Thanks so much for being here.